Hi, my name is Charles Reese, and I'm going to be your instructor this semester for Communications 1023, Fundamentals of Speech. Now, as we begin the session, I want to talk to you a little bit about the similarities between public speaking and what you're used to doing on an everyday basis as you communicate with friends, family, etc. First of all, you organize your thoughts. When you tell a story, when you communicate an idea to your friends, you have gone through an organization process in your mind, sometimes unconsciously, but you've ordered your thoughts into a cogent form that will make them easily understood. Second, you tailor your message for your audience. If you're speaking to friends in a classroom situation, you might speak a certain way. If you're talking to friends at work, you might speak a different way. If you're talking to your parents, to your pastor, to your children, if you're a parent yourself, then you might very well use different language, a different style of communication, a different vocabulary. You are adapting your speech to the audience to which you're delivering it. You also tell stories and present ideas for maximum effect. I'm a big storyteller. I love to share funny stories with friends and family. And as I tell those stories, I will adapt them to make them have the biggest impact. And you do the same thing every day. When you're telling a joke, when you're telling what someone said to you, when you're relating the events of your day, you tell them in a way that will make them have the maximum impact. Finally, you adapt your speaking to the feedback that you're receiving. If you're telling a story to a friend and they stop listening, you're going to do something to get their attention back. If you are talking to your child and their mind wanders, you do something to get them back, to get their attention, their focus back on you. All of these things, organizing our thoughts, adapting our message for the audience, telling a story for the best effect, and responding to feedback are parts of the speech process that we're going to look at this semester. You will organize your thoughts, your speeches, so that they have the most, they make logical sense. You want your audience to understand what you're saying, and therefore you're going to put it together in a way that makes sense. You're going to suit your message for the audience that you're speaking to. In this case, it'll be a group of your fellow students. Now, they will not be in the room with you when you speak because we are an online class. They will be sitting and watching a video of you. That's going to make a difference as well. There's a certain dynamic that you get to play off of when you're in a live speaking situation, when an audience is listening to a live speaker. We're not going to have that. That's going to be one of the challenges of doing an online speech class. I think we can overcome that, though. You also are going to tell the story for maximum impact. You want to set it up in a way that your stories climax at the right point, that they reach their peak and then they come back down to their climax. And finally, you're going to respond to feedback. Now, again, that's going to be difficult in an online situation. You're not going to have the kind of response that a live speaker gets. When I'm speaking to a class, or when a pastor is speaking to a congregation, or when a teacher, another teacher is responding to their classes, they're watching their students, they're watching their congregants, they are responding to what they're getting. We're not going to have that. That's going to be one of the challenges of an online speech class, is that you won't have the feedback. But typically in the speaking situation you do, and that's what you are using to gauge the effectiveness of your speech. Now, we've talked about the similarities between everyday speech or communication and public speaking. What are the differences? What sets apart what we'll be looking at in class from what you do on a daily basis? First of all, it's a much more structured speaking environment. You will have an outline that you'll be speaking from. You therefore have certain things that you have predetermined that you're going to be saying in that formal speech. Second, the language is more formal. When we have conversations with our friends, we throw in filler material like and as and like I just did. We try to avoid that in a formal speaking context. We want our words to feel pre-chosen and planned. And finally, you're going to be using a different method of delivery. When you're speaking with your friends, you don't have that formal situation. You might be sitting, you might be laying down, you might be walking. Here, you're going to be in a formal situation where you are standing still, preferably behind some kind of music stand or lectern that will hold your notes. There are certain constraints that come with that kind of delivery, and that's one of the things we'll talk about this semester. And so there are great similarities between what we'll do in this public speaking course and what you're already doing on a daily basis through communication with friends, family, colleagues. But there are some differences, and I want you to bear those in mind as we go through the course of the semester. One of the most important things we're going to talk about is how to deal with speech anxiety. It's a very common thing and plagues virtually anybody who speaks. There was a Gallup poll taken in 2001 in which respondents were asked to list the things that they feared most. 40% listed their greatest fear as public speaking. The only thing that ranked higher than public speaking was snakes. I mean, this is how frightened we are by the aspect or the possibility of standing up in front of a live audience. I mean, we compare it to snakes. There was another survey taken a few years later that 42% said they had a fear of speaking compared to only 19% who had a fear of dying. That means there are people who would rather die than get up and speak in front of an audience. And this is very common. And one of the things that we'll be talking about is how to overcome that fear. Now, the biggest thing, the most obvious factor in learning to overcome speech anxiety is speaking. The more you make yourself get up in front of audiences and deliver speeches, the more comfortable you will become. Will that anxiety ever go away completely? Probably not. But you will get to a point that you are able to cope with it, that you're able to deal with it in a more productive and effective way. But there are some other things we can do, some other strategies that we can use to help ourselves overcome our speech anxiety. One of the best things that we can do to overcome anxiety and fear about speaking is to adequately prepare ourselves. There's a rule of thumb in the speaking world that for every 1 minute that you're going to be speaking, you need to spend 2 hours in preparation. Now think of that. You're going to be doing 4 speeches over the course of the semester. The shortest one is the one that you'll be doing at the end of the week, your personal narrative speech. That speech is 2 to 4 minutes in length. According to this rule of thumb, for this 2 to 4 minute speech, you need to spend 8 to 16 hours in preparation. Now, I know that that's not going to always happen. But the more you prepare, the more time you spend writing your speech and rehearsing the delivery of your speech, the more comfortable you'll feel, the less anxiety you'll experience. I can promise you that. If you come in the day of without having rehearsed, without having prepared, your nervousness is going to be very obvious to you and to your audience. Next, you need to think positively. Tell yourself that you're going to do well. Tell yourself that you are of value and what you have to say is important. Tell yourself that you are liked and valued by those people who are going to be listening to you. And not only think positive thoughts, but visualize positive images. See yourself being successful. See yourself standing up comfortably in front of your peers. See yourself as a confident and a dynamic speaker. Put those images in your head, and it will be easier for your mind and your body to carry through and fulfill that goal. Now, in addition to these larger concepts that we've discussed on dealing with anxiety, there's some very specific tips I want to give you, some things that are very concrete that you can do as you prepare to overcome your own anxiety. First of all, you want to be at your best. Just as if you are an athlete and you're about to play a game or run a marathon or do whatever it is that you do as an athlete, you want to be in your tip tip-top physical shape. And you need to do the same thing if you're speaking. You need to be in the best physical and mental condition you can be. That means don't pull an all-nighter before you're supposed to speak. Don't drink lots of coffee and get yourself wired up and nervous before your speech. Prepare yourself mentally and physically to allow yourself to do the best possible work you can do. Next, as you're waiting to speak, as it's your turn, as you're waiting for your turn to come, you can either tighten and relax the legs of your muscles, or you can tighten and relax your fists. This releases energy and releases tension. It will help you to feel better and to get that initial nervousness out of your system. The third thing you can do, before you speak, take a couple of deep breaths. The common practice is that when we get nervous, we take short, shallow breaths. We're not getting as oxygenated as we need to be, and our minds are not functioning at peak efficiency. Take a moment. Stand there. Take a couple of deep breaths. Get yourself focused. Let that oxygen kick in, and then start your speech. Doesn't hurt to smile when you're doing that either. It kind of lets the audience know that you're comfortable and that you're relaxed. As you're preparing, work especially hard on your introduction. I mean, if you think about it, you're nervous. The first part of the speech is going to be while you're at your most nervous. Get that part really ironed out. Work out the details so that you're very, very comfortable and confident about the introduction of your speech. Chances are that once you get past that introduction and get into the body of your speech, the anxiety will have diminished or gone away completely. Make eye contact with your audience. It's much easier to think of them as friends and people if they are not just a blur of individuals sitting there listening to you speak. They become your friends, the people you know. Also, concentrate on communicating with them. Don't focus on your nervousness. Focus on what you want to say, what you hope that they understand from your message. And finally, use visual aids. It's something that will help take undue focus off the speaker and give you something to do besides stand and look at the audience. Now, obviously, there are going to be some rules about how to use visual aids, and we're going to look at that in a couple of weeks when we talk about your informative speech. There are things that are right and wrong to do when doing visual aids, but having a visual aid will help you in getting over that nervousness when you're dealing with an audience, if you're prepared to use them correctly.